What is up and welcome back everyone. Today we're in the garage because, well, it's raining outside. I'm going to try to fix this mess we made in the last 5 videos. We're not the whole mess, just the mess that we actually see. So as you guys know from last video, if you haven't, I would recommend checking that out because we mocked up something really cool, is we are going to be putting on this A or B touring rack on the Forester with custom brackets, and pretty much we're the first ones that I know that have done this, so it's going to be super duper cool. The only issue with that is we have to make custom rails. That's what Adrian's doing because he can fabricate, and then I have to fix this roof and protect it from rust. So what we did is we kind of covered it up, fixed it. So the spots back here are going to be covered by the rack, so I'm not too worried. I just noticed that. I'm not really worried of how they look as much, but the rack goes to this point. The issue with this point being is there's all these little dents here, and well, I sanded through the clear by accident. So pretty much you're still going to see those, and it really doesn't matter if it really does matter if they look bad or not. But these don't, because they're going to be all covered with the roof rack anyways, but these are. So today we're going to hopefully start fixing that. So I'm not going to do the whole process and record it because that's pretty much the same thing. But what I will be recording is this is probably going to be a multi-day single video, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be filling it. Oh yeah, you can see right there. I went right through the clear coat and you can see the base coat. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be filling the holes in probably section up to probably here. That's what we'll first figure out. And then we'll actually be filling them. So I got some stuff for when I did the rad mount on the STI, so we'll be filling it. And then, so that's going to be the video of filling it, sanding it down, making it all smooth. And then I'm going to paint it off camera and prime it off camera because, well, we have a video of us already doing that somewhere. I can't remember what side it is. It's one of these sides. So it'll be the exact same process. And then we're finally going to get to the final part where we actually go ahead and we actually polish the roof and coat it. So the stuff back here with the divots and stuff, we're just going to leave because, well, as I said, they're going to be covered and it's not such a big deal. So let's get to actually figuring out how far we have to go with it. So there is our line. It's about a foot back, kind of relatively in the middle. The rack sits right here, so it's just a little past it, kind of where there's a break between the divots. These are also where the worst of them all are. So once these are cleaned up, it's not as bad because there's not as many. So this is what we're using, just the classic Bondo stuff. So what I will have to do is I will have to go ahead and start sanding those down. Of course, I'm going to use electric sander, and because we're using this, we can use 80 grit sandpaper and just sand it right down to essentially where we started with the bare metal at the little holes, and then we get to fill it up with this 3 or 4 times, fill it, sand it, fill it, sand it, using the 80 grit sandpaper, and then you finalize it with 300, I believe, and then you can put your primer on, or put your glazing stuff on, and then let that dry. And I don't believe you sand this. You might actually have to sand this. I'll have to look at that. But then you can eventually put your paint on it directly. We might be priming it because, well, primer just makes stuff stick. So I got my 120 grit. I said I was using 80. That says 80, but I'm using 120 because that's all I have. And I've got lots of them, so there's no worries running out. Really, it's not going to be that much different. Got it on the electric sander because, well, this takes so much help compared to actually hand sanding it. And then got the respirator because we're in here and it's going to get real dusty. Not good for the STI, but what can you do when it's raining outside? So what I'll do is I'll start sanding them and then I'll let you guys know how it goes. Hopefully it doesn't take too long and we can start filling those spots in an hour. That'd be awesome. That isn't going to take long at all. Literally 30 seconds. Just proves how little stuff we actually had on it. So I should be able to do this pretty quickly. It's just going to be hard keeping actually track of where all my spots are. So I gotta go along and make sure I hit them all because some of them are actually painted really well. Good job. So we should go from a hail looking sort of thing. Now we got a sanded looking thing. So what I'm gonna do here now is I've done half of it or 3/4 of it. Is I'm gonna take some 220 now and I'm gonna scuff up all the clear. just so that when we go to paint it, it's already scuffed up. And now we'll just kind of smoothen out the rest of the divots and also get some of that really bad clear we put on in the first time. But as you can see, they're pretty smooth actually. So once we fill that, it's going to be completely smooth and is actually really looking okay. And there we go, just like that. Everything is sanded down and is not smooth by any means, but we can now see where we're filling. I left this one little one up here because I didn't want to get that close to the line, but I did tackle this one rust spot we found last video and just down here, so I gotta actually clean this out with, I'm gonna get a little toothbrush and clean that out, but then we will start filling this with primer. So not with primer, with filler. So I will start mixing some of that and getting it on. So for a golf ball size, which we'll probably end up needing 2 or 3, I think, is we're going to just put a bit here, and then we're going to take, I think it's like 3 centimeters of this, put it on and mix it, and then we have 3 minutes to get it on the car. So when you're doing that, I'd probably recommend using the proper tools and also maybe some ventilation. That's why I'm standing by the door, is because if you walk in there, it smells like body filler. What a surprise. Anyways, as you could probably see when I was applying it, my thing was like that wide, and I couldn't find the really narrow one. I think that broke, so I had to use a wide one, and the wide one has a hole in it, so we have lots of extra stuff. So we're definitely going to have to sand it down pretty good. But what we should be able to do after I set a time of 20 minutes, so what it's going to do is cure for 20 minutes, and then we're going to be able to sand that off. And then hopefully, I think only we need 1 coat, just because it's not like a huge dent, so it's nothing too crazy. So by the time we get this sanded down, it should be nice and level, and then we just put our spot putty on and make sure that's all nice and clean, and then we should be good to put primer on pretty much that whole front section. So now that it's cured for like 25-30 minutes, it's time to actually go ahead and sand it. So they say use 80 grit, but I have clear on there and I don't want to take that much off. I think more if you're doing hand sanding, that would totally make sense. So I put 220 back on the electric sander. Hopefully this collects some of the dust too, because this is going to be super dusty. And what we're going to do is just start to sand it down and smoothen it out, and then it should be nice and smooth pretty much. And then we just put some glazing putty on to just fill the little tiny porous holes, and we're good to go. Prime. The only thing is I don't have primer, I don't have paint because I used it all before. So that will be where we will jump to the next day, and we will continue on this and hopefully get it all ready to go. But as I said, I'm not actually going to show you guys painting and priming because you've seen it like 2-3 videos ago. So now with the holes filled with the body filler, what we're going to take is some of this glaze and spot putty and just spread it over the spots where there is that filler. And then we're going to use, instead of using that crazy putty knife that didn't really work, we're going to use a plastic razor blade, and it's going to give us a lot smaller of an area. So what I'm going to do is just dab a little bit on and spread it on, and then we'll let that cure. And then even though it says you can stand in 20 minutes, I have to go do other things. It's getting late. So what I'll do is I'll let this sit, and then I will prime it, and then we'll get to the phase where you won't see it till we start to get it actually all good to go and to be polished. The glaze is cured, I let it cure for a day. We're gonna sand it, but with this stuff we have to be careful because this stuff I think is a little bit less hard. So they recommend 230 or 220 to 400. I got some 320 right here, only a little bit, but honestly we're not sanding the whole body down, so it should be good. So now what we're doing is essentially making it nice and smooth. So when we lay down the primer, it is pretty much good to go and won't require much sanding. I still will sand the primer, but as I said, I'm not going to show you guys that because, well, I've already showed you guys one, so it's not that big of a deal. and then we'll eventually get to painting it and finally making this roof actually nice looking, or at least this first foot. And there we go, we have it nice and sanded down. So what the test is when you run your hands across, you shouldn't feel the difference. So you can't feel it on this guy. Actually, you can feel it a little bit on that one, but the rest, I might have to sand that one down. But as you run your hand across, you can't feel it actually meet up, or you can't feel any divots. So that means that it's pretty good, and honestly, it's not gonna be perfect, but it looks so much better than having little holes in there. So I'm impressed. Really, the sanding with the 400 grit worked, or the 320 grit worked really well. I did use 220 just to take off some of the really high stuff for like 30 seconds, but this stuff comes off like a fine powder, so it's really quickly and really easy. I also just sprayed a little bit of primer because I actually hit some metal there and I didn't want the metal to get any moisture on it, so I just quickly sprayed a little primer on it. But now we have to prime the whole roof, but I don't have the primer, so we're gonna have to wait for that. But that is what it is right now, so nice and smooth. I'll probably also sand when I spray primer, just sand it to make sure it's all smooth. And then we get to base coat it, and then I think I'm gonna just clear the whole roof while I'm at it, because why not at this point? It's all gonna be protected, and then we wet sand, polish, and all that fun stuff. And then our roof is done, and we're getting closer because Adrian's building the brackets as we speak. And just like that, the whole roof has been sprayed. So definitely some learning things here. Definitely some stuff that we'll go over before we back this out to the garage, out of the garage and start wet sanding it. So the first thing, I tried to do this twice actually. The first time, guess what happened? Ran out of paint. So their paint is a 2x2 square, which this is almost a 2x2 square. It's just not quite enough. So I had to grab a second can of paint. I also grabbed another can of clear because their clear only does 2x2, and I wanted to do the whole roof, as you guys know. So what I did the second time was I rescuffed it all and then resprayed the base on that area, and then I just put a little bit of base on the whole roof just so that we could get a little bit more of that flake, so it kind of blended together. And then what we did is we waited for the 45 minutes or whatever and then cleared it, and the clear was a fun part, and the clear is a part that I kind of want to redo, but I'm not going to redo because that stuff's kind of expensive, and honestly it's just better at this point to buy yourself a cheap paint gun and maybe just spray it on, like do it the right way, because the roof is definitely not the best. And I mean, we're putting a rack on it, so it's going to be covered up to here, but it's not the best. So one of the biggest things was actually this like flaky, you guys can probably not see it, oh yeah you can, that it's like flake. That's because when you're spraying clear, it actually can't be very warm out. So I did it about the same temperature as now, 20 degrees on the dot, exactly like what they said, and then went ahead and sprayed it. The issue was black heats up in the heat, so that means that the roof was a lot hotter, and I should actually temperature check the roof, but I didn't. What happens is you gotta lay it on pretty thick, or it creates this really roughness, and that's exactly what happens. So as you can see, where it kind of misted on, and I was doing it really close, but it dried just too quick. So you gotta keep your temperature down, you gotta spray it really thick, and you gotta make sure that it's on evenly. As you can tell, we're gonna be wet sanding it, so hopefully it evens out a little bit, but it's not the greatest. The places where we patched, I guess, weren't level, even though they look level in the primer, they looked level in the base coat, but as soon as I put clear, they didn't look level, so I don't know. We also got a little drops, because those aerosol cans left little drops on my roof, so we're gonna wet sand those off too. So we got a fair bit of wet sanding to do today, and then we're gonna polish it, but I'm gonna start off right with the 2000 grit, just because the 2000 grit, or the 1000 grit actually takes off a lot. I was surprised. So we're gonna do 2000 grit. We're not going to try to make this glass because, as I said, there's a roof rack going on top. We're just going to get it good enough because I don't want to do the whole roof thing again. And at this point, eventually this car, as I said, is going to get cleaned up because look at all those dents and stuff, and it's just not going to be a perfect car. But overlanders aren't supposed to be because, well, it will be eventually, there will be tree branches scraping and so forth. So I'm charging the battery's dead, and then we'll roll it out and we'll be good to start wet sanding. Now that the Forester is out there, I'm gonna go grab my sandpaper. So what I'm using is, as I said, 2000 grit, wet or dry. just 3M stuff because pretty basic. And I got it soaking in some water. I'm gonna be using a sponge, this guy, and I'm actually gonna be wrapping the sandpaper around it so that it kind of like evens the pressure so I don't get any high or low spots. You know, I'm probably gonna mess that up anyways, but we're gonna try with using this technique. And we're gonna do a nice like gentle coat first of our sand, see how that works, and then we'll tackle some of the problem areas and cross our fingers that we don't go through this time. Because if we go through this time, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But I'm also gonna be using some soapy water in a spray bottle just to make sure that that wet sandpaper is always wet, and we're gonna get to it right away. When there's water on the spots that we repainted, look at that. It looks factory. But I just did a little test patch and it still feels, well, not smooth. It feels like a little grippy. So let's just dry it off and see what it looks like. Because as long as we can get some smoothness, I guess we're good. Huh. I mean, it looks sanded now. So maybe what I'll do is give it a little more, and then I think we'll move on to doing the rest of the roof. This is definitely going to take a while though. So the main goal when wet sanding is to essentially make it so that the whole thing looks uniform. Well, I kind of did and kind of didn't, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to leave at this and then start with the 2000 grit, because if I start sanding too far, especially around that back area, we're going to start taking down it way too far. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to 2000 grit, because that will still remove a little bit here and there. So what we're going to do now is we'll take a look at this. And so it does look pretty uniform. As you can see, there's the spots that we didn't really 100% fix, but the rack is going right on top. And then there's some scratch marks right there. That is because I think I had a little piece of fiber in my 1000 grit. So when we 2000 grit, it will smoothen it out a little bit more and it should make it all clear. But the front looks pretty good, and it feels really good. Like if we look, there is still a little bit orange peeling, but there's no stock car or no like stock car that you get that doesn't have orange peel. So this theoretically would be better, smoother. It wouldn't be better, I can tell you that, because look at all our little spots here and there. So now I'm still going to use the same technique with a sponge and some wet water and some 2000 grit, and we're just going to continue sanding it. Hopefully get it a little more uniform and get it a lot better. And there we go with the 2000 grit. So it looks uniform-ish. I'm just scared if I start sanding it too much, we're going to go through the clear. So I think this is the time to polish it. It feels smooth. If we can, there, you can kind of see there is not a ton of really fine orange peel, so I'll be interested to see what it actually looks like, but I think it's time. There's a test patch I just did to make sure that my 2000 grit actually was 2000 grit, and it worked out not too bad actually. So here's an example. So this is the normal paint, and this is the roof paint. So it looks pretty much the same on camera. Remember, this is a compound. This is a polishing compound. This isn't our final polish. We'll do that once we seal it and everything. So if you watched the very first polishing of my 2004 STI, you know exactly what we'll be using today. So, and if you didn't, that's a really old video, maybe don't watch it. There's a newer one of just polishing and not cutting, but we did do a cut on that car because it was fresh paint like years ago. Anyways, so we're using the Grits Garage polisher with a 6-inch pad, I believe, or a 6-inch Velcro pad, and then we'll be using the Meguiar's 105 Ultra Cut, so really high cut stuff. This can actually remove 1200 grit, so if you went 1000 you go 1200, but I just do 2000 because that's kind of the most common sandpaper. And then we're using the Hexlogic's heavy cutting pad, so we're using everything we can to cut this down just a little bit more, and that's why I don't want to sand it too much more, because eventually we're going to start cutting it too far, and you know what happens. We'll go through the clear and we'll be back at stage 1. So we'll go ahead and polish it now. So this is probably a repeat for a lot of you guys that have done my detailing videos, but what we're going to do is we're going to take some compound, and we're going to make sure to get the whole pad, and we won't be using this much on all of it, but what we're going to do is now take this bit of compound, go like this, and just move it over the area that we actually are going to be polishing. So I'm doing this whole back section, so I'm just going to spread it over the area. So this is the way we have compound on everything, and then we're also putting the compound on our pad. So if we look, we're almost got the whole pad filled. You actually want to make sure that the whole pad is filled. So we're just gonna put a little more on this edge here and then move it around a bit. And if we look, our pad is now fully covered. So what we're gonna do now is take this, I'm gonna be using it at 1,500. And we're gonna be doing this pattern where we go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then up and down, up and down, up and down a couple times. And you don't want to panel to heat up, so you'll be doing it pretty quickly. And no pressure, you just want the DA polisher to do the work. Looking from this angle, it looks really shiny. The issue comes into play when we look directly above it. So as you can see, it's not cloudy. It's just rough, but it feels nice and smooth. So at this point, if you actually had your clear, spray properly, you would definitely have a more consistent overall look and feel to it. It actually feels real good. A constant look, so you can see there's some patches here. And also that would mean that you wouldn't have to wet sand as much as I had to. But looking from this angle, you can see that it's not perfectly smooth, nor is it perfectly clear. And you can see some little wash, like it almost looks like it's cloudy. But I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna polish this whole roof, because this is the process you would do if it happened to actually work correctly. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna finish polishing this whole roof, and we'll take one good look at it, and then that will be the end of this whole series of Fix on the Roof. It's not bad, but it's not good. I brought the Forester in the garage so we could take a final look under some light, because it's getting dark out there and it's kind of hard to see exactly what happened. From the front, I must say, it is the shiniest part of the car right now. You can see there's some wavy stuff, but like, it looks actually really good. I'm surprised, I'm impressed. And you'll see why I'm saying this. Because if we move a little bit further back, so it's pretty shiny, like, it's nice and smooth actually, right here. Like, look at that, there's a little bit of orange peel, but nothing too bad, so I'm impressed. And then we move farther back. So it's gonna be hard to see on camera. No, it isn't. There we go. It's actually easier to see on camera. So right there, you can see that it's super foggy, but once we get here, it's a little bit better. So that's because, well, there is a lot of orange peel still, and it's uneven. So if we can kind of go across here, yeah, there you go. You can see how it's kind of uneven. So that means that the wet sanding wasn't enough. We should have wet sanded more. The issue, as I said, is I don't want to go through and then have to re-clear it. And we're putting a rack on this. This is really just to stop the rust. So really, it's not a huge deal. But I think that's as good as it's going to get for at least now. It's the color of the car, same color. In the front, like, look at that. Look at that flake, guys. Oh, look at me. It looks great up this section here where we had enough clear that we could wet sand for a while. Who knows, maybe I will wet sand this a little bit more, but I just don't want to go through and then have to re-clear it again, because that's going to be fun. So this was a fun journey, definitely a learning experience. Got I don't know how many videos. I'm still editing them right now, so got a few videos out of it, but I think it was a good thing to kind of get my hands more on the paint side of bodywork. Definitely, I think would be a handy thing would be picking up a good air compressor and just a cheap spray gun, and then being able to actually spray and lay good clear, be able to lay good paint would probably be super beneficial. But as I said, this is the learning curve. This is the Forester that if we do something, it's not a huge deal. If we mess something up, not a huge deal, because, well, first of all, it's a cheap car. Second of all, this car eventually will be fully painted. There's lots of plans, but it pretty much requires everything to be redone. But right now, our plans are on what's in that pile. You can't see it anymore, but that roof rack in that other box. So Adrian's working on the brackets. As you guys saw, he's designing them and building them. He's building them as we speak, so we're getting close. We got the headliner sitting there, got something to do with that. All the trim pieces got something to do with that. So don't go anywhere, because there's going to be lots of Forester content coming still. And then the STI is sitting there lonely. I haven't put insurance on it yet, just because, well, they still haven't finished street sweeping our roads. It's June 6th. And also, there's no car meets to go to, so not a huge deal. I do have one project I want to do just with the grill of it, and I'm going to grab an extra grill to do that, but that's all I really have planned for this year. Nothing too big on that car, just because I don't have a lot of money right now, and I need to save my money. So the STI, we'll be cruising around. We'll be, with friends. Might be go biking, and then we'll be doing some stuff with the Forester. But well, who knows? Something might come up, and we might be working on some cool cars or doing some cool things eventually. But that is going to be it for our crazy 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 videos per se of working on the Forester roof. I mean, it's covered. There's no rust. We did a good job for first time. This is my first time doing this, so we did a good job. Anyways, that is going to be it for today's video, and that's going to be it for this painting, as I said. So next, we're going to be working on the roof rack and all the fun stuff in that pile. So as always, peace out and stay humble.